So now I'll show you how to use the standard simple block. A simple block is simply, let me show you in the demo. A simple block is simply this, for example. Yeah, just a block like that. So in that case, it's very simple. We see here all the installed blocks. This basically just lists all the folders that it found in this homepage directory, blocks here, and these are the ones that you have available. And I can just type in the namespace of this block in the column where I want to put it. So in the previous video I showed you the Astro Events block, and this will also try to autofill. So look, when I start typing Astro, okay, we already see it, so I just hit enter. So now I have Astro Events namespace here, and that would be the simple block. And I said that I want it in the left column, so it would be this position, left column, and this block here. So you always specify them in the order you want them to show from top to bottom. So in this case, this block you see here is the station data block. So I will just show you how I did this demo. So this is the station data block, and okay, we're assuming that I have all these blocks installed, which I do, but you would have to download them and install them. So let's just put station data. Now let's see. Okay, this is the weather networks block. So I go below that, new line, weather networks. Okay, so this would create these two blocks. Now, as I said previously, we also have this header block, and that will span this whole width of the page, and it will show right at the top. And for that, we use this option here, header block. And for header block here, I have the current, it's the current conditions block. It's called current, so I put the name current here, so, like this. So now I have the header block, and I have these two, this one and this one, and I can obviously continue. Yeah? If I want below that, we have, this is I think info block, so we put info like this, and I continue. Make sure you don't leave an empty line here. If you did that, it would just show a non-existent loading block here below these. So you just want to make sure that you don't have any blank lines. So just go back here. Now obviously this will follow the same logic. So here I have, this is the, I think it's called Outlook. No, sorry, it's summary. So it's summary like this. And below that, we have the current map block. Now again, these blocks, I can only include them if you've already downloaded them from my downloads page. This one. Then you upload them to your homepage directory, and you set them up, as I showed you in previous video, via the block setup. And once all that is done, then you can insert them to your homepage. So these would be the standard blocks, and that's really simple. Just always one block, one namespace per line, like that, and they go below each other in the same order. And for the footer block, this one, that would be here. So in this case, it would be dodges. Right. So that's the simple block. Now, there are two different types of blocks. One called a menu block, and one called a multiple block. And I've explained how that works here, but I will show you. So here we have a multiple block, and here we have a menu block. So let's just use this PDF. So this is what we've just done. Yeah? And remember that this block 1, this obviously is just an example. You have to use the namespace for this. So we have the blocks. So we did this. Now we've seen this as well. This is we have 3 columns. So we have block 1, block 2, and here it shows you exactly what it would look like. So if I put block 3 in the middle column and below that block 4, this is how they would look on the page. Yeah? And the size of the block, the height, will always depend on that particular block, because some will require more space, some less. But the width, it will always stretch to the width of that particular column. Now, what if we want to do this? Now, in this case, this is not a header block. This is a situation where we have just one column with 100% width. And you might be wondering, well, why didn't you use a header block and then two columns? Well, in this case, I could. But what about this situation? I want 3 blocks like this, and I want 2 blocks like this. A multiple block basically means that we take this one slot and we add more blocks inside it next to each other. Yeah. So I could have these 3 columns as I have here, and in this slot I don't insert a block, I insert a multiple block, and then I would have these columns just as they are here, but I would have 3 separate blocks loaded in that one position next to each other. Yeah. Yes, this is where you can see it very clearly. I have 2 columns, 50-50, and then in this I have block 1 here as the normal block. I have block 2 here, it's also a normal block, and block 5 is also a normal block. However, here I have a multiple block, and that created these, and because in that multiple block I inserted 2 blocks, which I will show you later, I have 2 blocks here. So how do we create a multiple block? Well, you can see the syntax here. First we type multiple block. So in my demo, I'm not sure, okay, I don't have any multiple block here, sorry. But let's say we want to create this sort of situation. So we put, and let's say we want to do it in the middle column, so we type multiple block and just put parentheses like this. And now inside the brackets we put whatever blocks we want to load in that position, right? So for now what I'll do is, before we go on, I'll just hit save. Okay. And now look, this is what I've already created. And this is what we just did. We have the current block, we have the station data block, we have the weather networks, the info block, gauges, current map. This corresponds to this. Yeah, we have these 2, these 3, and 2. And look, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and the footer and header. Now let's put a multiple block below the current map. So we type multiple block like this, and now let's say I want to put the astro events and the clock, these 2 blocks, this one and this one, and I want to put them side by side as a multiple block. So that would be this situation here, but I want to put it into my middle column. So what we do is you type the namespace of the block, comma, width, and then the blocks are separated by a semicolon. Now we might be wondering, okay, what this width is. It's basically the width in percentages, and it's telling this width is the percentage width relative to that block. So as I said here, the block will always stretch to the full width of that column. So for a standard block, it will just stretch like this. And this basically says, in this particular case here, block 3 is 40, block 4 is 60. So block 3 will have 40% of this whole thing, this whole column. And 60 is block 4, and you can see it here. So this one is 40, this one is 60, and you can see that this one is indeed wider than this one. So these numbers again have to add up to 100, and you can insert more than 2. As we've seen here, you can create a multiple block with 3 blocks. Look, and here we have block 2, block 3, and block 4, and we have them 33, 33, 33, so they're all same size. Likewise here we have a multiple block with 2 blocks, and they're 50, 50, and indeed they take up the same width. So here we said we want astro events, so I type astro events, and now we put the comma, and now we say, okay, well, let's say I want them, I want this one to be 40 or 30%. Now I put a semicolon, like this. And we said that the other one we want clock. Excuse me. So we put clock, and now we obviously have to put 70 because that would add up to 100. So, sorry, this should be a comma, of course. So, semicolon separates the blocks, and comma separates the block namespace from the width. Okay? Now let's look at our home page, see what happens. And voila, here we have our multiple block, and we have 30% Astro events and 70% clock. And just to show you again, let's see what happens if I change this like this. So I swapped the widths, and everything is always happening in real time. So as soon as you save it, your homepage gets updated. And look, now it's the other way around. Yeah. And I can of course insert more than one. I can insert another one. I can insert a text block. And obviously in that case I would have to change these widths because they have to add up to 100. So now I would have to put 0. So that would not show. So I have to put, let's say, I don't know, 30, but I have to make this one narrow, and this one would then be 40, like that. Okay, let's look what it looks like. Okay, now we have 3 blocks. And as you can see, this is probably not ideal because this one is too big. So you always have to, you have to take into account what that block, the nature of the block, what it shows. If it's a map, then putting it in this narrow column is probably not the best idea. So let's just keep it as it was, like that, and let's leave it to 50, 50. Just to make it easier for you, these buttons are just like templates. So they insert this, and you just replace these. So you replace that with that, that, and that. It's just like a template for that, so you don't have to type all this, but make sure you don't have these blank lines there. So let's just leave it like that. So those are multiple blocks. And the last concept is a menu block. So let's see what a menu block is. Now, some of you, and I know that some people use quite a few blocks, and it's not the best idea to have your page like infinitely long and all these blocks loaded. It would take too much time. It might be overwhelming for your visitor. So for that reason, I created a menu block, and I will show you what a menu block looks like. It's here. Here, a menu block is basically similar to a standard block, just that it loads the default block, the first one, and then imagine that the other ones are sort of below them, below the first one. They're on top of each other. Although this is not really how it works because they are loaded dynamically, so it really, in reality, it's just this first one is loaded, and then when you switch to the other one, it replaces the first one and it loads the second one. That's how it works. But you can think about it as if it was, as if they were on top of each other, and you were simply changing the transparency. And I do have some menu blocks here on my homepage, and it's this. When you create a menu block, you will see this menu icon at the top, and when I click it, it lets me choose the other blocks that I included in that menu block. So you will see what I mean. So now I have 2 blocks, and as I said, this one is loaded by default. That's the first one. It's the sunrise sunset. And look what happens when I switch to moon phase. See, it replaced the original sunrise sunset with this moon phase. And when I switch it back, it's gone, and we have this one again. So this basically allows you to have several blocks in one slot, and then the first one that you specify is the one that is loaded by default when I look at the homepage for the first time. So how do we create a menu block? Well, it's simple. Just like we did the multiple blocks, in this case, let's put one here. So let's put menu block, and again we put brackets. Now, a menu block, we don't have to specify the width because it will take the width, the full width, as we've seen in the demo. It will be the full width, just that it will completely replace the original. So in this case, we don't need the width. So we only specify the blocks, and in this case, they're again separated by a semicolon. So let's just say that I want to create a menu block, and in that menu block I want to have clock digital, and now we put a semicolon, and the second one, let's say I just want, I don't know, let's put some, okay, let's just use the wind block, wind. So now we have these two blocks in a menu block. One thing I should emphasize, and this is extremely important, PHP is case sensitive. If you don't write this in the proper capitalization, it will not work. So if I put in clock digital like this, it will not work. So in the template, I always use the camel case notation, which means that every new word has a capital letter and they're all one word without spaces. So, and you can see it here. So it has to be exactly like here. You see it's a capital D. It has to be a capital D here as well. And wind. Okay. Let's see what happens. Save that. We go back to our, and we have a menu block. Look, we have digital clock, and the second one should be wind. And indeed, wind. And we have the wind block. You can switch back to the one. And as I said, the first one is always the one that you see first. So that would be for the menu blocks. Next thing I want to say is that it is not possible to include one block more than once. So if, for example, you put a station data here, like this, it will not work because we already have one here. This will just not load. And I don't even see really a reason why you should do that, but just in case you did, it will not work. So last thing I want to explain is a sub block. Now you might think this is all confusing, but this is once you get used to this, it will all be quite easy. And I basically created this to give people even more flexibility as to how they want to set up their page. But if you really feel confused now, you can just use this. You don't have to worry about the rest. And maybe in the future, if you think you might give it a try, it's up to you. But I will show you how to do the last thing that is possible, and that's a sub block. So we've seen the multiple blocks. Now have a look at this page very carefully. We have a multiple block here, two are next to each other. Now imagine that due to the nature of the block, this one is much higher than this one. They occupy much more space in terms of the height than this one. Well, if this was the only option, then the problem would be that this block would stretch, and it has to have the same height. So, and it might not look very good. So you might be thinking, okay, well, what if I wanted to put two blocks on top of each other inside this multiple block, like this? You see? So we have these standard blocks. So again, we have standard blocks here, block 1, block 2, block 6. And we have a multiple block here. And that multiple block includes these three. Now you might be wondering, well, how does this work? Well, we still have this one block here, but inside this block, which is part of the multiple block, we have these sub-blocks. I call them sub-block. And so basically, you can create, you can insert more than one block inside this one multiple block section. So in this case, the syntax is we put multiple block, and instead of the namespace of this, we put the sub-block notation. So let's look at what it would look like here. So let's say we want to do that. So we would put multiple block like this. So first one, we want just a normal block. So we put block 3 would be the block 3, and it would have width 40. This would be the 40 here, just like we did here for the multiple block. So we put the first one. So let's just convert this one. Let's just do this one. Oh, so let's use Astro events 50. Right. So that's my first block. And now I put a semicolon. And now I want to put these two on top of each other. In other words, now we have to create a subblock. So instead of the namespace, you put in subblock, and then in square brackets, you put the namespaces of these two blocks that you want to insert, or 3 or 4, it's up to you. And they're separated by the ampersand symbol, like this. So, and then with a comma, and 60 would be the width of this. So, as I said, it might seem confusing, but it actually follows the same logic. So, here we would now put subblock, and as I said here, subblocks are in square brackets. So we put in square bracket like this. We click inside it, and now we put the block that we want inside. So let's say we will put inside some. Okay, I have to choose one that is relatively small. So let's just delete this, and let's make it a subblock. Let's put clock digital, and the second. Now you see that once it overflows the line, it just you can just type on the next line, but in fact it's still one line, so you can just ignore it. It's still one line, you don't have to worry about it. And we put the end symbol, and we put what we had there, wint, right? And now we just put the width, which would be in this case 50, because this one was 50, right? And that would be it. And I can put, let's say, just for demonstration purposes, I can put another block here, db info. This will be a standard block. And again, as I said, this looks like 2 lines, but in fact it's just 1 line, just that couldn't fit in the space here. And let's see what happens now. Save, you refresh our site, and look, we have a multiple block where we have 50% astroke events. Yeah. And in this case, it was made narrow because it could fit it like this. It will automatically stretch it if it's possible, but we have that. And then we have the sub block where we have clock digital on top of wint. We have the clock and the wint. And you can see that here it's, as I said, sometimes it makes sense, because in this case it doesn't really, because this block is also quite not very high. But here we have these two on top of each other, and that's a sub block. But as I said, once you get used to this, you'll find it easy. But for now, you can just start with single blocks like this. And the last thing I want to show you is what happens when you insert a block that does not exist. Okay, well, I told you in case of the clock digital, this is how you have to type it. Clock digital. We'll just put it here. And now this will work. But let's see what happens if I just use it like this. And we see this spinner, but it's not loading anything. And this means that either you incorrectly spelled the word, or you don't have the right case, or that block was not installed at all. Something is wrong with that block. So if you see this spinner loading and it just doesn't load anything, then there's something wrong with that block. And it's also great because these blocks are all independent. So even if there was, for example, an error in the PHP script, if one of these blocks had an error, something didn't work, it doesn't mean that your whole page would be down. It would just be this one single block not loading. So as you can see, it really has lots of options. And the last thing I want to show you is this highlighted blocks. So you can highlight certain blocks, and what that does is it uses the secondary color background for that particular block. So let's say we want to highlight the station data, so we just put in station data. That's the one, and it has to be one, obviously one that is used here somewhere as a footer, header, or one of these normal blocks. In other words, it has to find that block somewhere on the home page. So let's just use station data. And I also want to show you this theme. I said previously that there are two themes, so one is dark, one is light. So let's just switch to light. And now we see we have the light theme. So all blocks are now in the light design. And we can see that this block is highlighted. You can see it's a different color, and it's my secondary color. But because it's a light theme, it's not dark. It uses the light brown, because brown in this case was my secondary color. whereas all the other blocks use your primary color, right? And once again, if I change that to dark, save, okay. So now it's dark. Now we're back to the dark version, and you can see that this block now uses your secondary color to highlight it. And one last thing I want to say is that there is also a possibility to set this daylight night theme, and that means that the script will first look at, based on your coordinates, your GPS, it will calculate if it's nighttime or daytime. And if it's daytime, it will use the light theme. If it's nighttime, it will use the dark theme. Although, well, I personally use the dark theme all the time. And one last thing I want to say is that this only applies to your homepage, right? All the other pages, these, they will use this same theme. So this light, dark light only has effect on your homepage, this page, right? So hopefully, again, if you feel confused now, then simply go to the wiki, and everything I said, including the PDF, is available here in the homepage section. Here I go through all these things, including examples, including the PDF, and there's also a section about creating a new block. I will not talk about that now. If you are experienced enough and you know some PHP, then here are some instructions how you can create your custom block. So, as I said, we'll not talk about that now. And if we go back to our control panel, same thing goes for your mobile page. So, okay, before we do that, here is a reset button. If I hit this, it will reset whatever I specified in the homepage setup page for the blocks. So this will delete it. For example, when I click this, it takes me directly to this page, and I can edit the blocks. But let's just reset the mobile, and now I can set it up again, and now it asks me for the columns. And what I will say about this is that I highly recommend that for the mobile, you use 100. And what it will do is it means that all your columns would just be one column, and you can still use multiple blocks. But some of these blocks are actually quite wide, for example, the maps. And so on a mobile screen, on a small screen, it would be great if they just showed and spanned the full width of the page. So in that case, that's why you would probably, for the mobile, I recommend using 100%. And here we would put the current map. And below that we can put multiple blocks, many blocks, whatever you want. And then this means that on a mobile screen, this current map would be the full width of the smaller screen. So it would still be big enough. So but otherwise it works exactly the same way. You have the dark light theme, highlighted blocks, header blocks per block. And this we've already seen. This is the page for setting up the blocks. And that's basically all there is to it. That's all you have about the blocks, and as you can see, it's very flexible, and you can really create a homepage exactly the way you want without ever going to the code directly from the media template control panel.